Headliner Nation, what's going on? Welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you with this episode of Way Too Early ADP Review. What we're going to do in this episode is we're going to take a look at the top 25 players over on the Sleeper app right now in terms of their ADP and whether or not we think they're going to be rising before the start of the season, whether they'll fall, and what we see in terms of some fluctuation before we really get into the heat of draft season. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But on a more serious note, Headliner Nation, just want to say to everybody out there, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. And I hope the content we're providing is giving you at least a little bit of a breakaway from all the craziness right now. So I hope everybody out there is doing well. Make sure you keep an eye out for our live shows. Hopefully we'll be doing another live show here really soon, and you can jump into the chat and interact with us, ask some questions, or just hang out and chillax, whatever it may be. But I hope you're all doing well out there. And let's jump into the content we're going to be talking about now. So the top 25 players in terms of ADP, I do want to note that this is Dynasty ADP right now. So it might be a little bit different in terms of what you would be looking at for just redraft ADP. The one thing I will say about Dynasty owners, though, is they can be very reactionary. Dynasty owners want to be the first ones to jump on the next trend and things of that nature. And we'll distinguish some of those things, some of those traits within this ADP, especially if you're not a Dynasty player and you're looking for really just redraft. We're still going to have a lot to talk about here, but just want to talk about the way some things are shaking out really early this offseason. Now, this ADP comes from the Sleeper app. If you've never done a league over on the Sleeper app, it's kind of an up-and-coming platform for fantasy sports. You might hear us talk about them a little bit more during the offseason. We'll see what happens with that, but that's the ADP that I'm pulling right now because there are a lot of people drafting Dynasty leagues right now. A lot of people have extra time on their hands while they're being quarantined at home or they're being locked in at home, whatever it may be. They have some extra time on their hands, so they are doing a lot of drafts right now. That's why I actually kind of trust some of the ADP that we're looking at here. So let's go ahead and jump into that ADP and start talking about what some of these guys look like. Now, the top 5 players right now for ADP: Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, and Ezekiel Elliott. Now, if you've watched any of our other shows so far, we've put out our top 25 overall rankings. We've put out our top running back rankings and wide receiver rankings as well. So if you've seen those, these might differ a little bit. And again, this is ADP. This is the average draft position right now of a lot of these players. So let's talk about some of the top ones to begin with. Christian McCaffrey, he's the 1.01 right now. Nothing's changing with that, and I don't expect anything to change with that anytime soon. They've got plenty of weapons there in Carolina to kind of keep the pressure off of Christian McCaffrey a little bit. There has been some concern. Some people are thinking that can Teddy Bridgewater push the ball downfield enough to really get the defenses to not focus on Christian McCaffrey. I think we're fine right now. We're going to continue to monitor that and see what happens. If there's injuries or anything like that, that could obviously change some things here. However, I think Christian McCaffrey is going to be just fine. Saquon Barkley coming in at number 2. I 100% agree with that one as well. I've heard some people say that they might go a little bit different here at the top. Saquon Barkley might be their 1.01 and McCaffrey might be their 1.02. Barkley, again, with my running back rankings and the rankings that we did here on the channel, I have McCaffrey at 1 and Barkley at 2. They've already said, Gettleman and Judge both have already said in New York that their game plan this year is to run the football. They really want to establish the run. Saquon Barkley is going to do that. Obviously, he's going to add in that PPR look as well. He's primed for a huge season if he stays healthy. If he stays healthy, he's going to have a huge season. Number 3, Michael Thomas. Maybe that surprises a few people. Now, Michael Thomas is definitely going to be the first overall wide receiver this year, but I'm a little bit surprised right now that he's this high up in the rankings going in at 3 overall, because I would still expect some of the top running backs to come off the board instead. But like I said, because this is Dynasty ADP, that might push these wide receivers a little bit higher. When we get into redraft ADP, you might see Michael Thomas fall back just a little bit. He's still going to be a top 10 pick. Wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 5 pick, but I do think in redraft, especially, you see some of these running backs go a little bit sooner. But with Michael Thomas, he's definitely a very safe pick. DeAndre Hopkins at number 4. This is the first one that we come to that I don't agree with. DeAndre Hopkins in my wide receiver rankings is all the way back at 8 right now. Now, I know a lot of people are really, really excited about the Arizona Cardinals offense. Kyler Murray leading the way there, DeAndre Hopkins being there now. You've got Larry Fitz, Christian Kirk. You've got a lot of weapons. Don't forget about Kenyon Drake either. My problem is that could we see some of that letdown that we saw this past season with the Cleveland Browns? OBJ comes into town. You've got a second-year quarterback in Baker Mayfield. The chemistry just didn't develop. And sometimes that happens with free agent wide receivers. Sometimes it takes a little bit, or wide receivers that come in after a trade or things of that nature. It can take a little bit of time. Now, if the Cardinals defense is really bad this year and they have to throw the ball a lot, which I probably anticipate, yes, it's going to help DeAndre Hopkins. But again, you've got Kenyon Drake that's going to see some passes. Larry Fitzgerald will. Christian Kirk will. There's a whole lot of people around them that we're expecting Kyler Murray to get the ball to. So I'm just being a little bit safe with DeAndre Hopkins right now. That's why at number 4, I think that's a little bit high for me. Number 5, Ezekiel Elliott. Don't have any issues with Ezekiel Elliott there either. In terms of running backs, he might be one of your safer picks. This is going to be a really good offense again this season. So I don't have any issues with Ezekiel Elliott being this high. His ceiling, it has come down just a little bit in the last couple of years, though, with Amari Cooper being there and having that true number 1 wide receiver. Not only that, but also having Michael Gallup there, who was really, really good last year. And don't forget, Tony Pollard saw a little bit of time here and there as well. Are we going to see Zeke come off the field a little bit more for Tony Pollard this year? Will Pollard maybe just be in the slot a little bit more? Lots of things could happen there. So being at number 5, I am a little bit surprised he's at number 5, and a couple of the guys that we have coming up here aren't a little bit higher. But again, no issues with that one either. I would expect as we get a little bit closer to the season that maybe we see Dalvin Cook move up into that top 5 ADP. I think one of the reasons that people are kind of off of him right now, and I know I skipped over Alvin Kamara. I'm going to come back to him here in a second. But the reason I think some people are off Cook right now is because Stephon Diggs is gone. So there's a lack of that big stretching the field type playmaker in Minnesota right now. They're going to have to get somebody in the draft. So we're kind of waiting on that. And not only that, but we saw obviously at the end of last season, Dalvin Cook, that injury bug popped up a little bit again at the end of the season. So Alexander Mattison stepped in. But I think if they get another weapon there and people get excited about that offense again, you'll see Cook pop up. Alvin Kamara at number 6. Again, a little bit surprised he's that high, especially with the weapons that are around Drew Brees right now. Again, you've got Michael Thomas, who's already at number 3. You've got Alvin Kamara going in at number 6 now. They've signed Emmanuel Sanders. You still have Traquan Smith. And Jared Cook had a fantastic end of the season. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, is going to take some of those targets that maybe Alvin Kamara has saw the last couple of years. So Alvin Kamara, for me, right now, is probably not a top 10 pick. I would be more comfortable taking him at the beginning of the second round. That's not going to happen, though. I don't think he's going to end up falling that far, but that is where I would more than likely want to take him. I think this is a little bit high for me. You've got Devontae Adams coming in at number 8, which, again, that surprises me a little bit, too, that he is this high. Tyreek Hill coming in at number 9, and then Chris Godwin at number 10. Again, these are Dynasty ADP, so to see the wide receivers a little bit higher right now isn't all that surprising. Adams, I think, is going to bounce back this year, but they've got to get another playmaker out there. Yes, they have some guys, 100%, and they've signed Devin Funchess, and you know what we say here on the Fantasy Headliners, hashtag never Funchess. I don't think that's the playmaker, though. I think they need another true weapon to pull away from Devontae Adams a little bit. I still think he's a great option this year. He's going to be a top 3 wide receiver for me. I don't think anything would necessarily change that, but I think they need to add another weapon for sure. Tyreek Hill, the big-time playmaker, being there. He's not hurt by anybody around him with the way that offense functions, and Patrick Mahomes getting the ball out to people. So Tyreek Hill is a safe bet in terms of upside. And then Chris Godwin coming in at number 10. Definitely not surprised how high he's going with the addition of Tom Brady. Tom Brady, we know, loved Julian Edelman in the slot there in New England. Are we going to see the same thing from Chris Godwin? A lot of people are kind of off Mike Evans right now, though, because Tom Brady concerns over being able to throw the deep ball, whether or not he can still do that. So Godwin kind of being that PPR type machine, that's why he leads the way there. But Mike Evans is literally right behind him at number 11. So people aren't that scared about Mike Evans in Dynasty right now. So they're still buying into Mike Evans. And then Juju Smith-Schuster at number 12. Jake's talked about Juju a little bit over the last couple of weeks here on the channel, and we're going to talk about him more. In terms of some other redraft ADP that we've seen from some other websites, he's going a lot later than this. So this is definitely a dynasty-driven ADP here for Juju. But let me be 100% clear. He's a wide receiver 1 for me this year. He's a wide receiver 1 for Jake as well. We're extremely high on him with Ben Roethlisberger coming back. Now, the hope is that they add a backup quarterback that's a little bit better than what they had last year with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. So let's hope that happens. And if that is the case, then Juju definitely is going to be back up there this year. And don't forget, the weapons that they have around him now have had another year to grow and get better. James Washington's going to have a better year. Deontay Johnson can definitely help as well now. There's a little bit of chemistry there on that side. So we'll see what happens with that. But they've got some weapons around him now. Nick Chubb coming in at number 13. I am surprised Chubb is this high because of Kareem Hunt. There is a lot of talk right now about how Nick Chubb dramatically dropped off after Kareem Hunt joined the Browns last year. Was it that bad? No, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't bad enough for me to say I'm going to stay completely away from Nick Chubb this year. But in terms of a PPR league, Nick Chubb is more of a low-end running back 1 for me right now because of Kareem Hunt getting a lot of those looks out of the backfield. I think that they're going to use Kareem Hunt quite often this year as well. And again, lots going on around him for other weapons. But I do think because they've brought in people on the offensive line. Bringing in Jack Conklin was a huge one for them. They were able to bring him in, upgrade the offensive line. I do think that they are going to run the ball a lot this year. So is he a safe pick? 100%. Is the upside going to be there? Probably not as much as we saw at the beginning of last year. Joe Mixon coming in at number 14, and I'm glad people are as excited about Joe Mixon as I am. I have Joe Mixon as my running back 3, and when we put out our running back rankings, I saw a lot of you saying that there is no way that you could invest in Joe Mixon. Let me be 100% clear. Joe Mixon is a top 5 running back for me this year. Right now, he's a top 3 running back. The situation at quarterback, it could get even better at this point. Andy Dalton upgraded to a Joe Burrow. I mean, that could have obviously 100% happen. And if that happens, that's good. Now, Joe Burrow targeted his running back last year 55 times in LSU or at LSU. So because of that, Joe Burrow in that offense last year did use his running back. He could, being a rookie quarterback, what is good, what is familiar, that could be something that he looks to going to Joe Mixon a little bit this year. And don't forget as well, the offensive line last year, 3 injuries before week 1. They get their first round pick, Jonah Williams, back. This is going to be a truly upgraded offensive line this year. Joe Mixon, behind an awful offensive line at the end of last year, did very well. Still ran for over 1,100 yards last year. He's primed for a big season this year. That offense there in Cincinnati is going to be really good. And then Amari Cooper at 15. Still kind of waiting on the Dak Prescott situation. We know he's tagged at that point, so that's not going to change anytime soon. Is he going to end up getting that contract? Amari Cooper has got absolute chemistry with Dak Prescott, though. The one argument you could make about Amari Cooper here is just he might be too inconsistent for you, but you know me, hashtag always Amari. I've got him up here behind me. I'm going to continue to root for him. I'm okay with this pick. If I were to get him at the beginning of the second round, I'd be ecstatic, especially if I got a really good player like a Joe Mixon. Like if I were to draft early and take Joe Mixon at the end of the first, go Amari Cooper at the beginning of the second, boy, am I off to a great start. I'm really excited about that. Our next set of players here, 16 through 20, Odell Beckham Jr. coming in at 16. That does surprise me. There's still a lot of people that have a bad taste in their mouth about the Cleveland Browns offense last year. I'm surprised people are still buying Odell Beckham Jr. this early. What I'm not surprised is that he's... Let me rephrase this. Sorry. I don't want you to get confused. I'm surprised he's going this early. I'm not surprised, though, of where the players are kind of falling behind him. So let me rephrase that a little bit. I apologize there. With him going at 16, I expect him, by the time we get to the beginning of the season, I expect Odell Beckham Jr. to possibly be a late second round pick. Being here at 16 right now, up towards the beginning, middle of the second, I think is really good value for him because I think he's going to bounce back. But I think as we see like training camps get underway, when things get back to normal and we see stuff start to pick up, when that happens, I could absolutely see players start to talk about, or fantasy owners start to talk about these other players a little bit more. Can Baker Mayfield really get it done? Things of that nature. DJ Moore being this high also surprises me, though, especially with Teddy Bridgewater being there. Is he going to be able, again, to push the ball downfield to DJ Moore? DJ Moore had a great season last year. Again, this is Dynasty ADP, so that factors into this a little bit. DJ Moore, though, again, kind of a back half of the second round type player is where I would expect him. So I do think these two start to slide a little bit. If we're looking at a redraft, a guy like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, definitely would go over these two. I would put Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs over these two. The fact that Josh Jacobs is down at 19 is beyond surprising to me. Probably the most surprising player here in this ADP. Josh Jacobs potentially could be a beginning of the second round, end of the first round pick by the time the season gets here. As we see him work in training camp, as we hear more about him, as the situation plays out there with more weapons, they're definitely going to add weapons in the draft. As those things happen and that offense comes to the forefront a little bit, Josh Jacobs is going to explode up draft boards. Derrick Henry coming in at 18. People probably still not 100% bought into what he did last year, because if they did, Derrick Henry is basically a first-round pick. So probably people are just being a little hesitant right now because of that. Aaron Jones coming in at number 20, even though he was PPR running back, number 2 last year, right behind Christian McCaffrey. People are worried about a couple of different things. Number 1, can he keep up with the touchdowns? Okay, we say it all the time on this channel. Don't go chasing touchdowns. They can fluctuate a lot from year to year. But our biggest concern here is that the Packers have already come out and said, we're going to invest in another running back possibly and make this a three-headed committee here. That doesn't spell good things for Aaron Jones. So if that ends up happening, that could really kill his ADP. And with Aaron Jones, if they do get another running back, Aaron Jones at this point becomes like a third-round pick probably for a lot of people. So that doesn't surprise me either. 21 through 25, Leonard Fournette coming in at number 21. Leonard Fournette is going to be a steal in redraft leagues this year. I expect a lot of the same from 2019 carrying over to 2020 in terms of his receptions. However, his touchdowns were so poor last year, I can't imagine that he's not going to bounce back in some way, shape, or form and get into the end zone a little bit. Our first tight end pops up here, George Kittle being the tight end 1. So if you're going to want George Kittle, you're probably going to have to spend a late second round pick to get him. Julio Jones going at the end of the second. With redraft ADP as we get closer to the season, Julio Jones will start to creep up a little bit more. But we talked about him in our wide receiver rankings. He's the guy that every single year people seem to make excuses about not wanting to draft, but he ends up giving you a good season anyway. So that's going to end up happening again this year. And don't forget, with having Todd Gurley there now, that could really help Julio Jones, okay? Really excited about that offense this year. Yes, Austin Hooper is gone. Could that end up pushing some targets over to Julio Jones? Do they go to Todd Gurley? Do they go to Calvin Ridley? There's some extra targets potentially out there that Austin Hooper will not be eating up this year. Kenny Golladay at 24, 100% on board with Kenny Golladay being a top 10 wide receiver this year, especially with Matt Stafford back. Hopefully that back is healed up and he is ready to go. Kenny Golladay, though, I'm surprised he's not a little bit higher with Dynasty ADP and not going above Julio Jones and Leonard Fournette. Cortland Sutton coming in at 25. Cortland Sutton's a stud. I believe in Drew Lock. I think people are going to need to see a full season of Sutton and Lock before they truly buy in. And I'm okay with that because that means that maybe I can get them a little bit earlier than other people. So there you have it. Our top 25 ADP as of right now. I'm going to keep an eye on 26 through 50, and then maybe we'll do another video here in the next week or two about that 26 through 50 and the guys that we're seeing there. And again, what are we going to see happen? Are these guys going to move up and down? Are they going to stay the same? A lot of these players here in the top 25 could potentially fluctuate up and down. And don't forget, with the drafts coming up, that's going to make some things pretty crazy as well. So a lot more content to come here on the Fantasy Headliners. Head over to our website, thefantasyheadliners.com. You can pre-order our draft guide right now if you want to. If something happens with the season and we don't have football this year, don't worry, we will refund that price to you, so you're not locking yourself into anything if there's no football. However, here at the Fantasy Headliners, we are choosing to be very optimistic that football is going to happen this year. Do me another favor, Headliner Nation. Hit the thumbs up down below if you appreciated the content. Hit that subscribe button if you are not part of Headliner Nation already. Do that for me. And then also, if you've got questions, comments, whatever, leave them in the comments below. Comment on the video. Let me know what you're thinking out there. What one of these top 25 players do you think is going way too high? Who's going way too low? Who do you think has the best chance to drop outside the top 25 by the time we get to the season? Headliner Nation, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, everybody.